just being out in the hallway kind of feels like a job interview a little bit, walking into to the room. But I think
more like an inquisition.
Well, you know.
Could you introduce yourselves?
No, I plan to do that. Yeah.
And what your title is?
Yeah. No, I plan to do that. But I think first and foremost, and it's good to see so many folks from Pine and Ivy here. You know, first and foremost, we're fully committed to having continued regular communication, especially as our plans for a final reconstruction begin to materialize. But I do want to thank the Board of Supervisors for inviting us here for the opportunity to speak before everyone tonight. My name is Chris Coop. I think I've met probably about half of the folks that are in the room tonight, either knocking doors or from past Township meetings. And I work in local government and community affairs for Energy Transfer. And what that means is that it's my role and it's my responsibility to ensure that there is a good line of communication during construction and then the operation, of our pipelines. And that's really for us what tonight is about. It's an extension of that. It's continuing that communication and that dialogue. But I'd be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity, obviously, to introduce the gentleman to my right, to your left, and I'll start with Eric Tassick.
Yeah, so my name's Eric Tassick. I'm the newly assigned project manager for the Revolution Pipeline project. This project in particular is exciting for me because I'm a native of Beaver County. Grew up in Patterson Township, which is a Beaver Falls mailing address. So obviously I have the opportunity to work in the county that I grew up in. And really I rely on Chris to facilitate meetings like this, and Matt as a support for the construction team and our effort out there to hopefully execute successfully and be good community stewards. So.
And Matt, why don't you introduce yourself as well? Sorry.
My name is Matt Barrow. I'm right-of-way manager for Energy Transfer Partners. Basically what that means is I translate for the public and go out in the community to get right-of-way agreements, deal with the public on any items that pop up. I like to say I kind of translate the engineering talk to what us normal people want to hear, and like how it's said and how it's interpreted from engineering speak to actual layman's terms, because half the time I'm asking questions as well in these meetings of what everything means.
And I realized as I was getting into sort of our prepared marks that I do have a fact sheet for everyone that I'd like to just circulate, and if you get a chance, I can pass this out. But I think, well, first of all, show of hands, the first meeting that we had attended last September, who all was here for that? Karen, I think you were. Yeah. So most folks weren't. So maybe it's worth providing some background and some insight on Energy Transfer. So Energy Transfer, we're one of the largest midstream companies in the United States. When we say midstream, we mean the pipelines, the compressor stations, really the assets that are necessary to facilitate the movement of refined petroleum products. So everything from crude oil to gasoline to natural gas. That's gathering systems, transmission systems, things of that nature. We have about 84,000 miles of pipelines in 38 states, and in Pennsylvania we're very focused on gathering systems, and then we also have some historic legacy refined product pipelines. You're probably more familiar with those assets, but they're in the service of refined petroleum products. Some of those run through Beaver County as well. So just some background, broader background on Energy Transfer. But we were asked to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting tonight, I think due to some questions that were raised at the last supervisors meeting regarding our schedule and and how we're communicating with National Fuel. And so since that time, I've had some, I think, conversations. I think, Karen, we spoke on the phone for a good bit, really just to tell you, everything, that we know as far as where we're at with the reconstruction, and also with the remediation, with the site cleanup of the property at the end of Ivy Lane. And so, again, I want to be very clear that we fully intend to continue communication. We fully intend to meet with and brief our neighbors on Ivy and Pine once a final reconstruction plan has been established. But at this time, as of tonight, that's not something that we've fully determined. There are just too many variables at this juncture to prescribe what that reconstruction alignment in the area is going to look like. And so as of today, the site cleanup of the 752 Ivy Lane property is just about finished up. And if you're witnessing a lot of traffic over the course of the last, I guess, 7 days or so, that's really what that was supporting, right? That's the site cleanup. That's the removal of the remaining out structures that were at the 752 property, as well as getting that stuff off-site for off-site disposal. And so I believe, Matt, we canvassed the neighborhood and knocked doors the week prior just to alert folks to that activity. But I think there were a couple of calls in response to some of that activity, but by and large, I think it's been fairly quiet. And so, just to emphasize on what Matt had said earlier, he is the primary point of contact for folks in the community. Hopefully you all have Matt's contact information if you have any questions or concerns while we're out there. But as of right now, our top priority has been to provide the DEP with additional information necessary to improve our erosion and sediment control plans. And so we are very hopeful that the DEP will provide feedback here soon on our plans, at which time work related to that stabilization, erosion and sedimentation control would intensify in the area. At that time, our priority would shift to the reconstruction of the pipeline along Ivy and Pine. And so, again, final plans have not been determined, but we're working through various alignment models that include the use of the two properties that we recently purchased at the bottom of Ivy Lane. 750 and 752, I believe, are the house numbers. And so, again, I want to reiterate that our intention is to maintain regular communication. I regret the fact that there's probably been a lull in communication, as there was really a lull in the activity that we had in the area since October. But obviously we've got some activity that's taking place on site. Eric, I believe that site cleanup is scheduled to be finished tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes, it should be if all things go well.
Yeah, so we're basically finished at the property, right now, and then the equipment that's down there will further demobilize tomorrow. And so, guys, that really concludes the opening, remarks that we've had. I do know that there's probably some questions that folks have. Naturally, we'll do our best to answer as many as we can, and continue communicating for the questions that at this juncture are just still unknown, if in fact there are any. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions that folks on Ivy and Pine have. Sure.
My name is Susan Michael. I just want a better understanding of what your roles are.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you said local government and community affairs communication. Is that township,
That's
who does that
primarily,
consist of?
yeah, that's
Primarily
primarily,
the township?
yeah, that's primarily my focus is communication with the town fathers, with the board of supervisors,
Okay.
where we operate. And so I'm out of the Wexford office, but you know, I work in Western Pennsylvania, and Central Pennsylvania, and Eastern Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and Ohio. But you know, I live in Western Pennsylvania. I'm from Pittsburgh, so this is very close for me. So
Okay, and Matt, your communication is regarding the right-of-way agreements, and communication with us?
Yeah, any landowner, basically involvement with any of our projects.
Okay, and
And
Mr.
just-
Tasic, I've heard your name. How new are you to this position,
To the project specifically,
project manager?
so project manager,
How long have you been in this role,
since the commencement of my career at Energy Transfer, which
in
was
this area?
in this area.
From the
For
start of this project, have you been in this role,
for the Revolution Pipeline specifically,
in our area?
I took over the previous project manager's role in December of last year.
Was there a reason the previous project manager, was there a reason you had to replace him?
He decided to leave the company.
And so I think Eric, as the project manager, was tapped because of his experience working in Pennsylvania, his local ties to Beaver County. But I can tell you that there was a very thorough and proper turnover that had taken place before the previous project manager for the pipeline construction departed from the company. So it's not like we're starting from, you know, square one, and then all of the resources, the folks that report up through Eric now that used to report up through the previous project manager are still in place. So
We heard that there was a lot of turnover of the ground workers. Is that true?
I can't speculate on turnover of ground workers.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what are the hiring requirements of the ground workers and what type of training they receive? Because we did hear some rumors there was a lot of turnover.
I'm not sure what you mean by ground workers, ma'am.
The ones who are actually down there working.
Construction workers, the ones
At
digging
our
the grounds,
site.
putting the pipes in,
Yes.
whatever they're doing on the pipeline.
Your diggers.
Yeah, the people actually doing the
There
work.
are people on the ground doing the work.
So in terms of the actual workers themselves, like what
Sure,
are?
you have different specialties, right?
Sure,
Okay.
yep.
So, in order to break it down, maybe they wanna know what specialties you're talking about, or all of them. Like you have people that dig the holes, you have people that actually lay the pipe, you have
Yeah,
people
there.
welding the pipe.
That's okay. I think I understand the question
Right.
now, and you know, maybe I take it for granted that you know, obviously the folks that are working on any pipeline project, you know, for example, if and maybe Eric, you can help me expand, but if we have folks that are, you know, welding on a pipeline, they're required to pass you know, welding inspections. There are also you know, folks that oversee the workers. I think what I'd like to emphasize more than anything is that everything that we're doing out here is beholden to a strict code of federal regulations. For us, for a gas line, that's CFR 192, right? That's the publication that's kind of our North Star in terms of what we're required to, the way that we're required to build, operate, maintain, you know, our pipeline systems. All of that is spelled out through a very rigorous code of federal regulations, and Energy Transfer meets or exceeds all of those. We use, you know, turnkey general contractors that specialize, you know, in pipeline construction, and all of those workers have rigorous qualifications in their respective disciplines, whether that's, you know, welding or someone that is in charge of overseeing environmental inspection, things of that nature. There is a very, I guess, rigorous division of labor on a pipeline project. Thank you for offering that clarity. I was a little bit unclear what the essence of the original question is. Eric, does that sound about right?
Yeah, so like Chris touched on, I mean, the reference to the Code of Federal Regulations, so that's it's for safety, right? First and foremost for us. One from a pipeline integrity perspective, so that's the reference to the Code of Federal Regulation. And then two, the safety of our employees and then our contractors. So there's a required contractor safety orientation for any new hires that are onboarded during the commencement and during the entirety of the construction process. And then a required environmental training to be good environmental stewards. Based and the fundamentals are on our permit conditions and what's required of the Department of Environmental Protection. And then, like Chris referenced, welding, we have a qualified welding procedure that, they need to, all welders are tested to, and they either pass or fail. As far as the operation of heavy equipment, qualified operators to ensure that they know the equipment and can safely operate it. And as an act of prudency for us, typically we require third-party inspection for all trades. That's welding, that's bulk earth disturbance with heavy equipment and the use of it. That's environmental, so the reclamation of the pipeline with environmental inspection. So that just touches on some of the requirements during the construction.
How often do they inspect?
During the entirety of the project, so every day that we're in active
The
construction.
third-party inspectors, it's a neutral third party, right? So, they're the ones that stand up and say this needs to get fixed. And we tell them with the welders, as far as if the pass-fail, right? They don't get to retake the test. Just kind of how that type of testing works.
Yeah, so it's pass-fail, and then there's typically a grace period. So if you fail, you can't retest within a 6-month window.
Right. And how often are you on site as project manager?
It varies, but for the most part, I'm dedicated to the project on a day-to-day basis.
But how often are you on site?
It varies. Sometimes every day, sometimes a few times a week, but it's at least weekly.
So Chris, a lot of my questions have to do with the rerouting of the pipeline, and it sounds like you're not ready to talk about that yet. Will we have another meeting with the Ivy Lane and Pine Street to keep us informed so we know what's going on once the plan is solidified?
For sure, 100%.
That would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's something that I wanted to lead with, and regrettably, we would have preferred to have that meeting behind us and taken place already, but 100%, yeah, no, we can commit to continued communication, meeting with the folks on Ivy Lane, just depending on what the weather might be like, at the appropriate time. Maybe we spare folks from coming into the township. We have maybe a different framework, but the short answer is yes. We're continued to ongoing, transparent, open communications with our neighbors, and we are neighbors now, right? We own the 2 properties and feet at the end of the street.
Okay, one quick question. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Our pipeline is definitely shut down because of the major event. But our pipeline feeds the Mariner East too?
Your pipeline, as in the Revolution pipeline?
Yes, that's the one, yeah, that's,
So, the Revolution pipeline system,
comes from Butler, heads to Bulger,
that's right,
okay?
and then begins processing there. Some of those liquids, the dry gas, right, the methane is separated out. That's
Okay.
batched for commitments on the Rover pipeline system, which goes to Ohio. The ethane is taken out at the processing facility, and that's committed to the Mariner West pipeline system, which goes through Ohio, eventually into Sarnia, Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
And then the remaining liquids, what we call the C3 plus, is batched and committed for the Mariner East pipeline pipeline system, that's correct.
Okay, and the Mariner East is up and running?
The Mariner East pipeline system, Mariner East 1 is fully commissioned, right, and has been for some time now.
Right.
Mariner East 2 is operational. There are some additional work in eastern Pennsylvania that's necessary to fully complete that pipeline. And then the Mariner East, what is called 2X, ME2X, it's a 16-inch pipeline that begins in Delmont and then terminates in Marcus Hook, is still very much under construction. So the Mariner East series of project is really a
Here's all I'm asking.
Okay.
None of those other pipelines are affecting getting this one finished. They're separate.
That's right. So this
Once the DEP gives you their blessing on this, this is going to be repaired, finished, ground finished, and we move on.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I'm asking. In other words, I'm saying, I know how the state and the DEP can get all convoluted. And all I'm saying is, something over near Harrisburg isn't gonna hold us up.
No, the two projects are completely
Okay,
separate.
that's what I just need to know. In other words, once you get the blessings of everybody that needs to give you the blessings of getting this one rearranged, reconfigured, okay, we'll see some action going on this pipeline.
That's right.
Okay.
So you mentioned keeping us informed. Would you be amenable to meeting with us as a group so that we're all hearing the same thing and we all have a chance to ask our questions as opposed to calling people individually?
Well, first and foremost, I think that it's the one approach is not mutually exclusive to one another. Obviously, I think that there's about a dozen folks in the room tonight. Certainly, there are more folks on Ivy Lane and Pine Street that are not here tonight. So we do need to have continued communications through calls, knocking doors when there's a relevant subject such as mobilization, what's happened here over the past 7 days with those. But certainly, we are amicable to having periodic communications, and I think it's for everyone's the fairness of everyone's time to do those meetings at the appropriate time. So,
But we'll make time. We're flexible, we'll make time.
Sure. I just want to make sure that in the future, when we do have additional discussions, meetings, that we've got something that's ready to, that's a development, right? That it's not just the status quo. And unfortunately, the last few months, that's kind of where we've been. But if you do have additional questions in the interim, certainly Matt is a good point of contact for everyone. Myself included. Sue, I think I left a couple of voice messages on your phone just trying to touch base with you in the interim. So I think that there's a multi-pronged approach to continued communication here. Sure.
So Chris, I have to say, I was very happy that we did get contacted about the demolition and reclamation work that was being done, and a good explanation of what to expect. Because there was a lot of traffic, a lot of trucks, a lot of dumpsters, a lot of everything up and down Ivy Lane. It was good to know that. On the flip, I just want to give you an example. You said, there was kind of a lull there, but some of the things that have really rubbed Ivy Lane raw, I will tell you, was, for example, the helicopter on Christmas Eve. Boy, did that rub a lot of
23rd
people
and the 24th,
raw.
constant.
And we did not expect that. Then on New Year's Eve, it was the straw bale throwers up and down the pipeline. And we get nervous when there's things on the pipeline that we don't expect, and we all start calling each other. Are they supposed to be there? We start asking, are they wearing hard hats, or do they have vests on? Should they be there? Should we call the police?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes us very nervous, and we've had times, Eve back here saw a car on the pipeline at 9 o'clock at night, and we called the police for that. But when we don't know these things are happening, we are just so jittery
Yeah.
that it then leaves a bad taste in our mouth. So I think it's very important, even if it is just equipment on the pipeline again that hadn't been there for several weeks, if we know about that, it's so much easier for us to go about our daily lives, and we're not constantly calling each other saying, should we call the police?
Yeah.
And I'd recommend next time you're in the calling each other situation, pick up the phone and call me. You know, I can give you the answer.
Yeah, the
Okay.
facts.
And that's what we've always been. You guys have had my cell phone number from day one, and it's rang from time to time, but it hasn't exactly been a daily phone call from people. But I do answer, I do call you back, we do address your concerns. So if you are in that moment at, I don't know if at 4 a.m. if I will be able to answer it, but I'll try. Definitely when your names pop up, I answer the phone. So we make a big effort to get that picked up.
Now,
So
there's a little bit confusion about number, because when the notice came out about the demolition and the remediation, and you passed out the letter on
Yeah.
Ivy Lane,
one is
there's
my
your
office.
number.
One is my
which
office.
I called, and then you said, wait, use the cell number, so.
You have them all
that's
now.
a little bit confusing.
I can give you my personal phone in person if you want. But you guys have everybody get hold of me you need to. And we office in Wexford. Chris Coop office is in Wexford as well. Eric's down here most days. If not here, he's at Wexford. He's all over this project. So we're here to answer the questions. Sometimes the telephone game gets confused as far as what the actual answers are, so we can at least address it from the beginning.
But let me be clear about something in terms of providing a proactive, heads up in terms of activity intensifying in the area. Yeah, I mean, certainly moving forward, we did that, last week. Regrettably, I think that, the notifications with regarding this to the spreading of seed, we did make notification. To the township, to the police department, things of that nature. But I think moving forward, any opportunity that, if there's activity that's just, out of the ordinary, especially at first, right, when the construction activity starts, once it becomes, hey, they're out there working again every day, maybe it's, we're not calling folks, every day, but certainly when it goes from, kind of, status quo to things intensifying, it's important to do that. But like Matt said, I mean, you've got his contact information. That's what we're here to do is answer, questions. And I think that we've worked pretty hard to make sure that everyone on Ivy and Pine has that contact information, right? So
So I've got a question for you,
okay.
and I'll be professional and respectful, okay? In light of what happened in our neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
how do you answer, and your safety record, how do you answer for the continued reports that are in the news about accidents with energy transfer pipelines all around the United States? I don't know if you can answer all that,
Right.
because you're here, I get that. But there are a lot of news reports that come out, almost on a weekly basis at this point.
Missouri, March 3rd, Flatlands explosion.
Mariner East 1 and 2, Bio Bridge, Missouri Panhandle, ours, Dakota Access Pipeline, Rover Pipeline, Lake Charles.
Yeah.
We've pulled them all up. Look, I'm just gonna be candid, but I too am gonna be respectful. We're concerned.
Sure.
We're doing our
anxious.
research. We're following things very closely. Sinkholes, water pollution, explosion in Missouri on March 3rd. Consistent problems, and now what we're being faced with is your line crossing another line.
Yeah.
And frankly, our fear has escalated, particularly since you bought the DeMarco property. That's bringing everything closer to us. And our biggest concern is a problem with your line. And you have to admit, that was a big problem we had. And luckily, no one died. But if we have a problem with your line, that is intersecting with another line, we could have a much, much worse catastrophe than we had in September.
Yeah.
And we could have deaths. You
This
have to
part- yeah.
understand our concern in that regard.
No, I certainly do, and I think it's a testament to the character of the community, how, you know, patient and frankly respectful, you know, you've been to Energy Transfer, so, you know, we sincerely appreciate that. I think that's been the experience of everyone that's had exchanges with our neighbors, with the township and everyone. It's been a great, you know, community to work with. What I can tell you is that this pipeline will not be put back in service until it has been verified to be safe. This is under, you know, certainly a level of, I want to choose my words wisely here.
Scrutiny?
A level of oversight that should inspire confidence in the community, and so that's really respectfully how I would answer that question. But you know, we realize that, you know, that you're probably reading some news articles. I can't really speculate on what might you not or you might be reading, but with regard to your neighborhood and to this pipeline, there is a level of oversight here that should inspire confidence.
And respectfully also,
Yeah.
in discussions regarding the national pipeline, we were given a lot of detail. I mean, a lot of very specific technical detail. So at some point, when it is appropriate, we hope that you will provide the same level of detail.
You got it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the commitment is that once we've honed in on and do not have variables with regard to final reconstruction and final alignment, that's a level of detail that again should inspire, you know, confidence with the community that we'd be happy to discuss further.
If you stand on Golf Club Road, Golf Course Road, and you look up, and on the right is where the explosion site was. But if you look to the left, through the trees, you can see the bottom of the pipeline. The dirt has slid away from it, and the pipeline is holding up the overburden of dirt. So there's another location where your pipeline could collapse because there's no dirt underneath it. It's all slid down the hill.
Right, there is additional, and that's kind of what I was getting at the beginning. And Eric, please, I want to be technically accurate here, but there is additional, you know, obviously stabilization, temporary and permanent that needs to take place thus far. But just so everyone understands, that the pipeline is not active. It remains in an inert condition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There's a piece missing from it.
That's right. Yeah.
It can't be turned on.
Yeah.
Two pieces.
Well, National Fuel was talking about how they traverse a slope. They go straight up it. Then they come out and they find a nice flat land. Then they go across. Then they'll come back down it. Looks to me like you guys just go across the slope. Why would that be? And potentially, and we didn't get the final report yet, but potentially, that's what caused this pipeline to separate. Because you had ground movement and it pushed against it and it came apart.
Yeah, there are a variety of different ways to build and construct, you know, a pipeline, and certainly the slopes and the stabilization are taken into account.
Are there any standards on erosion mitigation like that, or erosion construction to mitigate erosion? To go straight up instead of across?
There sure are. and that's covered under the Chapter 102 and 105 permit, regarding how one builds, constructs, operates a pipeline from an earth disturbance standpoint.
Okay.
Can you talk about how, with National Fuel being a FERC pipeline, the routing, with National Fuels being a FERC pipeline, they have, the state will step in and basically do eminent domain if they wanted to put the route in the line they want. In our situations, we typically, it's a negotiation between landowners that own their property. They grant us the rights. We reach terms with them, and we connect the dots. I mean, that's our entire game.
That's a
entire job is connect the dots. And
Yeah.
So you make deals with landowners and kind of you're special. You just put the pipe in however you can put it in. However it fits.
No. The construction methodology has to be consistent with best practices to
Okay.
be able to build a safe pipeline system. But what I think Matt is saying is that the way that other pipelines, and remember this is is it class, what class is it of gathering system? Is it class 1 or 2?
It varies, but nonetheless, it's gathering. So, like Matt mentioned, we don't have the ability to condemn landowners. Therefore, everything is privately negotiated and driven mainly by two variables, right? Where a landowner would want a pipeline on their property, and two, environmentally and the impacts associated with it. So those are the two drivers for us. And, first and foremost, regardless of the environmental impacts, I think our top priority, like I said before, is safety. So that includes the pipeline integrity, and that's more a matter of public safety, right? Like Chris said, it's more best practices and during the routing and development phase, what can be done to mitigate our risk from a pipeline integrity perspective and a public safety perspective. But again, the drivers and the variables are typically driven by privately negotiating with landowners and the environmental aspect of it.
But I would say that in addition to that, there are federal safety requirements that are incorporated into the regulations. For a gas line, it's CFR Title 49, CFR 182. For a liquids line, it's a little bit different. It's 195. But
It's heavier.
well, there are little different nuances with regard to the construction specifications. But depth of pipe, things of that nature, those are regulations that we're beholden to, and that's always kind of the North Star. Well, folks, if there are no other questions,
I make a comment here. If the residents like this kind of meeting, I think the township will hold it here again for your informational meeting, bring the other people here.
That helps all the
That's
residents.
good for you.
Works out nice.
Absolutely.
Sure.
On behalf of the township, we'll say, do the same format. Yeah.
Does that work for you too, Chris? Is that okay?
yeah, I the one thing I just want to be cautious of, because I realize that there is one, again, I think that it's important to have continued communications between Matt as we have additional new developments, but I just think that the timing of that is very important. We want to have meetings at an appropriate time when there's new developments to share with folks, and our priority has been to provide the regulatory agencies with what they would need to get to additional benchmarks that you would see additional activity in the community. And so I think that the forum is very important, but certainly we're committed to having additional meetings. And I feel good about the discussion that we're having here tonight, but certainly this isn't the only way that we communicate, right? We want to have continued communications. And please, before we leave here tonight, if you don't have Matt's contact information kind of as your primary point of contact, right? Let's say that you have an additional question that you want to raise tomorrow. You've got someone that you can pick up the phone and call. It doesn't have to be a periodic forum like that. That's very important. I will tell you that I prefer, and I think Matt prefers, phone conversations and meeting folks, because those are the types of exchanges where you get to develop a relationship with folks. We're not going anywhere, right? You know, we have a pipeline to maintain, to operate, to reconstruct, and we're very serious about having good, valuable, honest, open, transparent relationships with you all, you know, moving forward. And so that's that broader communication sense is something that we're certainly amicable to.
Chris, I was thinking your go forward approved plan. I think that's when the residents want to know what was going to happen.
Absolutely, Frank, and I don't know if you were,
Each one of them is, I can understand that, but
Yeah.
the go forward approved plan, I think, is what the residents like to sit down as a group and talk about it.
Yeah, Frank, and
That's what you guys are thinking.
I don't know if you were here when I mentioned that, but that's something that we've emphasized a few times tonight. Certainly, that's a benchmark where we've got to sit down and meet with folks, because that more than likely will involve some increased activity on Ivy Lane that we're going to have to, you know, contend with. That's mainly of an inspection sort, but I do want to. Again, inspire a sense of confidence. There, you know, the Board of Supervisors in this township have been very good about making sure that the plans that have been submitted to them regarding road use, things of that nature, have a standard of excellence, and I think that's a testament to the leadership that you have here in the community, making sure that the way that we would use this road is in an acceptable way. And so I think that's why, especially for the site cleanup and restoration work, it's been done in such a responsible way. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say that as well. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you folks. We'll be here for a few minutes to shake hands and exchange and kind of, personalize this a little bit. And please, if you don't have, for some reason, if you don't have Matt Barrow's contact information, we can certainly get that to you tonight. But we appreciate your time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you
it
got it.
very much.